The guy who is talking about that is Andrés Rodríguez, who was the president of Spain Media, and sharing your impeccable insights.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I'm Andrés Rodríguez. I'm coming from Madrid. I found my company, Spain Media Magazines, 10 years ago. We are on our birthday. We never imagined that we suffer in our country the most incredible economic crisis in our history. We are decreasing 7 years business and social rights. We have strong problems in the country. Fortunately, we are growing last 3 years ago, slowly, and we are close to recover our economic position that we have in 2007. I'm a journalist. I've never been a businessman, but now, today, my company, Spain Media, is the reference in the publishing market in Spain, in the middle of the two big names like Hearst and Condé. We are the independent guys, but we are the unique publisher that we are launching new magazines and new products. Nobody in Spain launched new magazines. That is, of course, sad news. It's not just a news to be proud. When I'm talking about magazines, is that we believe strongly in print and in digital too. But I'm absolutely convinced that print is the first step to build a brand. Okay, if we need to build a brand, the brand that the followers trust, we need to begin with the print. Just two examples briefly before I talk about the radio. Our portfolio began with Esquire 10 years ago. We are #1 men's magazine in Spain. We have Robb Report, the American magazine too, like License. We have Forbes, #1 economy and lifestyle in Spain magazine. This is the cover that we did this month. That is a joke for the fashion and business issue. And we propose to the readers to smile with the doubt that it is a magazine or is a bag. We have our own magazine, international brand called Tapas that we launched 2 years ago. We publish in Spanish and English, and we have elected Best Magazine of the Year 2016 in Spain and National Gastronomy Award. Okay. Finally, 1 month ago, we have selected by New York Times to launch the first European edition of Tea Magazine, the magazine that everybody knows. We launched a couple of weeks ago. Because we have time and we have ideas and illusion, and we try to find new places. I visited Tyler Brûlé a couple of years ago that everybody knows because as you, I'm a fan of Monocle, very interested about the radio perspective that he has. I was in love with the Monocle strategy of give contents on audio and radio for the network. He is more aggressive than me because, as you know, he told that he don't want to invest a lot of people, contents, and money to give contents to Google and Facebook and work for Facebook. He prefers to invest in his own brand. I'm not too radical than Tyler, but I came back to my office after visiting Midori House, thinking about that he has the English, we have the Spanish. Spanish is 500 million people speaking language in the world. Tyler told me one of the most important questions, that is, he's not making a big business with the radio, with Monocle Radio. And that's the same problem that we have now. We are not making a lot of money with the Spain Media Radio, but we have a great unique position in our country because in just 1 year, we pushed the big players of radio, like it's Cadena SER, this is the #1 open radio in Spain, to open the new podcast business line called Podium Podcast. And now in Spain, just the big #1 player that is Cadena SER and Spain Media, we are producing podcasts in Spanish in Spain like a radio station, not like a particular podcast. The lines are completely different. They are pushing to have big audiences of the EGM, that is the Audit Bureau who control the audience of radio. And our strategy is to create the most interesting content that we can don't put on the paper because the paper pages of the paper are limited, or because we want to hear the voices of the people, or because we want to use another language. Spain Media Radio, we have our own radio studios in the newsroom of the company. You need to imagine how people are delighted to come to the studios, to the newsroom, because finally it's not just a question of content. I'm looking for audience, but I'm looking for affluence and affinity to my people, to my clients, and to my readers. And if we have relationship with, with the marketing director of BMW, he thinks that our magazine can help on advertising or advertorial, or could be content to explain how the company is going fast, launching new products. They want to explain these kind of things on our audio, speaking. And any other radio station are interested to give voice to these interested people, because if these people speaks on the normal radio, the audience is going down, or the interview just has 2 minutes duration, no more, 2 minutes longer, 3 minutes longer, it's no more possible because the people change the channel, continue and zapping the channel. But if you're looking for this interest for the podcast, you have a loyal audience who are looking this kind of content. At the beginning, 1 year ago, we began creating podcasts just for the brands that we have. We have more than 5 podcasts weekly on Forbes. We have a daily program, 10 a.m. live, called Forbes Daily. This morning, I was explaining the things that I see in the summit. We have tapas podcasts, giving the voice to chef or new trends on food. We have the launching of the New York Times Style magazine with podcast too. And we have the unique fashion program radio under the official brand. That was the beginning, but now, I explain in a couple of slides later, we are producing new programs, not under the brands that we have on the magazine, just to try to create the best audience and as possible. We began in 2016 with close to 500,000 listeners. If we compare with the big numbers of the radio station opera are not too much, but we are the #1 podcaster audience radio station in Spain. The listeners came sometimes for the app, that we have, of course, our own app that you can find, or most of the people came for the social network because they are not looking at Spain Media Radio, they are looking for the contents. We create new shows. We are not putting the contents of the magazine on the radio station. Absolutely different language, absolutely different teams. It's not the same people who make the T magazine on paper, same people who make T magazine on audio. Sometimes the editor-in-chief or the deputy editor, they are scared about to speak on a microphone. We need to find a new team. This is an example of Forbes 4 shows that we have. The Forbes Daily is about business world, how it's moving the business world. Forbes Reviews just full economic information. Forbes Emprende is a magazine just for entrepreneurs. Forbes People is one of my favorite shows. It's stories about how businessman who has a big career in his life. One of the things that I like of the podcast, and some of the audience explained to us, is that the people is learning a lot when they listen to the podcast. They learning things. And usually the time for the podcast is no more than 20 minutes. That is the time that we have checked, not just us, the American podcast industry that is bigger and older than us. That is the time that the people prefer when he's going to run, or he's going to cook, or he's driving on a traffic jam, and they don't want to lose the time zapping on the open radio station, listening things that they are not interested. 20 minutes is the normal length. We have a great compromise with jazz. We select that when we don't open, we are showing a live 24 hours alive, but we don't create 24 hours content new daily. We are creating new contents every day and more content. But when we don't have a live new content, we have jazz music. We are the unique jazz music programming this kind of sound in Spain. We have some programs like Dr. Jazz, that is my podcast. Spain Media Lab, very interested, talking about new trends on communication. Journalists, we interview other companies, we interview the editor-in-chief of the biggest newspapers, we interview the creative director of advertising agency. We talk about the communications responsibilities of politics, of the government. El Enganche is our first sports program. I was not too much interested about the sports on radio because personally I'm not interested in sport, but I'm surprised because we give the green light to El Enganche, and it's one of the most successful stories on the station. It's not just information about sports, it's about sports from the journalist point of view. It's same like La Libreta de Bangal. La Libreta de Bangal is a very funny podcast. It's a resume of how the sport journalist is making mistakes in his day by day. Because sometimes yesterday they say they don't like the Real Madrid team, and one day after they say, I love the Real Madrid team. We put all together, and it's a very, very funny podcast. La Escóbula de la Brújula is a history podcast. Hoja de Router, You Imagine, technology podcast, and Fuera de Imprenta is a book podcast. This is the podcast for the We Are Launching Tea magazine. We found a digital newspaper called El Español. El Español is 1 year in the market. The editor-in-chief and the owner is Pedro J. Ramírez, could be the most important and famous journalist in Spain. We are founder with him for the El Español newspaper. I'm in the board of the member. We have 5% of the stakes. We are launching Tea Magazine. We launched Tea Magazine inside El Español. We have with El Español 13.5 million unique users in just 1 year, and we are fighting to be #1 on digital newspaper in Spain. All these podcasts of Tea Magazine are inside the El Español. You can use it, you can listen on Spain Media Radio, on the social network, or in the newspaper. Tapas. We have a podcast for art, because we print and we publish L'Oficial Art. That is the #1 art magazine in Spain. And this is a humor podcast, Tal para cual. That is a story. Every podcast has two brothers, and the two brothers are talking about how they feel, how they compete, how they work in different places. They are two famous brothers. Sometimes you know one of the brothers, but you don't know the other one, no? And this is how we communicate on graphic. All the people who came to the radio station, just black and white, no video. We don't produce video of the people that is coming. I don't know in the future, but we don't want the video fight against audio. We are working now to develop the next step of the radio station that could be premium radio. Try to offer to the listeners some contents on exclusive or some contents first of all, crossing with the magazine, crossing with the subscription of the magazine, digital or newspaper. I try to ask to the listeners a small amount to pay for the podcast. We are creating the first association of podcasters in Spain with Cadena Ser and the local podcasters. The most difficult thing that we have is to convince central media that podcast is the future or one of the futures of the radio, because central media, they have a lot of interest and on commission of the total amount of the money that they are investing on radio, and they prefer to continue putting the money on the big radios, including when the big radios are decreasing the audience every month. Next month, the EGM, that is the ABC Bureau of the radio station, first will be testing the podcast. I have the hope that when the EGM is testing the podcast, the market will be more consolidated. And that's my picture. It's a good way to speak Spanish, and learn Spanish. Free. Free. I don't know anything that I can do or help you.
That's it?
Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Any questions from you? Yes, please, I go for yours.
Yeah, hi, this is Srini here. I'd like to understand, what is the average duration of your podcast? How much time do people listen to a podcast? And how many listenership, or how many, I don't know, how many views, equivalent of views or uniques you get for the best of your podcast and the least of your podcast? I'd like to understand some numbers, because we've been trying to do podcasts for a long time and we've not been very successful. So just like to understand.
Okay. I try to answer by the end. Okay. I'm not agree that the successful of the podcast, just be a number. I think we are on the content business. Arnaud de Puyfontaine began this morning explaining the Vivendi position. And he said that, of course, the big mantra, the content is king. We are making this podcast radio station because we are journalists, we believe in journalists, and we want to use the radio and the audio language to make more journalists and more influence. Okay, but the market needs figures, okay? The most successful podcast that we have has the audience of 60,000 people listen, not alive. 60,000 people, for me, interested in a story, for me, is an incredible, huge figure.
On which time span? 60,000, like not...
1 year, 1 year.
Okay.
1 year. Not exactly 1 year, because it's not just the beginning.
Approximately, okay.
Around 1 year.
Okay.
Medium time for the podcast, 20 minutes. But there is coming some shows for 10 minutes, and there are shows for 2 hours. But the medium size is 20 minutes.
The least successful figure? The very, very low success?
Could be around 1,000.
1,000.
Between 1,000 and 2,000.
Okay.
But if I program and produce a podcast and the podcast has just 1,000, and I'm like a publisher and journalist, I'm interested to create and produce a podcast of books or poetry, I will do it. Because I'm a publisher, I want to expand the books culture, or I want to be influenced on the publishing books editorials.
Sorry. You told me about the podcast duration, but do you also measure when people are dropping off? Is there, similar to video, yesterday we saw
like
that.
AJZ?
Yeah, that's
yesterday,
right. Is there a drop-off? Do you measure the success of a podcast? I would say
I
is
understand.
getting people to schedule.
I understand. I think in the first 30% of the podcast, if the people likes the podcast or they are getting out.
But you don't track them, for example, in engaging them to ask why or something, or how did you like it, or so. You don't engage with your listeners.
We have a great, aggressive social network of the radio station. We give our contents to Spreaker, to iTunes, and other local distribution podcast companies like iVoox. But in the future, I think we will protect the content, first of all, for our subscribers, and second, we will do for that platforms. But I think the most important thing is that the people who create podcasts, we need to maintain the quality of the contents, because the market will change. Finally, the market will change, and the people will pay if the content is real good enough. One of the problems that we have now is the biggest professional making audio is going for the open radio stations, because they have more salary and more money and more opportunities there. And we are now a new generation of podcasters that they don't find a place in the open radio station. I think it's a question of time.
And maybe one sentence to your business and revenue model. You say you're looking for exquisite content to make people pay on that, especially. But now, how does it work now?
Okay, now we have some advertisers who wants to be different, who want to be in a language that are different, because they want to transmit that the brand is innovative, modern. And now in the future, when we will open the premium line, we will have the subscribers' incomes.
But the marketing director of BMW, for example, who would give you an inside interview, does he pay for being interviewed?
No.
But this is like an ad in a certain way, yeah?
No.
It is journalistic. No, but it's both. It's journalistic content, and on the other side, here is marketeering the brand in a way,
of course.
through his insight.
Of course, BMW is one of the best clients that I have in the magazine, but of course, it's very interested to listen a responsible mind of a guy who needs to sell 3,000 cars in Spain this year. And he don't select the cars. Germany say you need to sell these cars.
So, thank you very much.